thank you to our sponsors, Little Voices. Are you a teacher with a passion for drama, music and performance, or feeling stuck in the classroom? Little Voices gives you the chance to step into a role where you can truly inspire young minds through the arts. This is a company I know well and admire. They're passionate about child development, highly rated and genuinely transformative. With small group teaching, a focus on confidence and creativity, with the opportunity to guide children through Lambda qualifications, you can make a real impact. Plus, with the support of a nationwide franchise network behind you, you can run your own successful business, doing what you love while teaching in a way that truly fits your life.
Hello, and welcome to the Pit Pony podcast with myself, Sharon Cawley,
and me, Sarah Dunwood,
in which we talk to teachers from all walks of life who exited the classroom from what they thought was a job for life and thrived on the other side of teaching. Coming up in this episode...
And I think something that really stuck out when, Sarah, you were just talking then, was this guilt factor. And that is so... mums, more than anyone, really feel that guilt factor. Because once... And that's a massive thing. When you return from maternity, like you said as well, Sharon, the workload's still there, everything's still there, and yet you have not got that same time and that brain, that bandwidth to then manage both of these things at the same time in the same way.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Pit Pony podcast. And today we have Sarah Grocutt. Sarah, in her own words, said that teaching was her life and it was her whole identity. And she started teaching in 2009, made it all the way through to 2021. But as with all of our Pit Pony podcast guests, she's no longer in teaching. She was Key Stage 2 lead, the end specialist, and it really was her life. I'm really looking forward to talking to her today, but for the sake of clarity, as is always the case when we have two Sarahs on the call, we end up in a world of pain. So, Sarah Dunwood will be referred to by her whole title today, and Sarah Grocutt will just simply be Sarah. So, all that to one side, Sarah, welcome to the Pit Pony podcast, and tell us what it is you do today.
Thank you, Sharon. Thank you, Sarah. So, there's different ways of calling it.
So, you're an email strategist, okay?
Yes.
Let's call it that, where I'm imagining clarity and precision of language.
Exactly. Which is, it's great, isn't it? Isn't that great? I'm so bad. Do you know what it is? I find it, because there's so many different ways you can describe what I do, so it's a bit different to teaching. But it's
an interesting one, really, because that ties in with losing your identity.
Yeah.
How easy is it to just say, I am a teacher?
Yeah, very true. Very, very true. And it's very clear. It's very clear to others what you are as well. You can't go wrong with that. Whereas when you say, oh, what I'm doing, it's like, oh, okay, what actually is that? But yeah.
And then if it's not a simple title. So, Lady Dunwood, what is it you do?
I'm a chief operations officer for a national tutoring company. And the next question is, what does that involve?
You said that a lot better than I did.
I've rehearsed it many times. But you're right, because the number of times that I'm kind of either I find a different way to say it that gives it more of a sense of what it is rather than its title, or I am braced for the immediate question afterwards with the quizzical eyebrow and what does that actually mean? And then I have to go to teacher speak. I'm essentially a deputy head in a company. That's what I am.
Yeah.
It is challenging. It is challenging.
And the other piece that sits around that is people can say they're no longer a teacher. Well, we are, because we still hold the qualifications. We could still walk into any classroom and deliver.
Yeah, very true.
But it is one of the jobs, I think, where once you go and you have no intentions of going back because of how you left, you almost feel not worthy to use that title anymore. It's your fumbling at the beginning has led us down a whole rabbit hole, which is beautiful. So thank you. Thank you for allowing us the space to do that. But getting us back on track, where do you want to start? Where do you want to start with this career that I know you loved?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'll start right at the beginning. So, and how I got into teaching, because it's unusual. So I've never ever taught in mainstream. I went straight into SEND, which is quite unusual. Most people do start in mainstream and then eventually pivot over. So I remember it was 2009, and actually jobs were quite scarce in primary at that time. So you can see how things have changed a lot since then, right? And I remember jobs were quite scarce, and I went actually to a supply agency straight away, and they put me in touch with this specialist school, this long stay SEN specialist school, and they said just come in and do some days and see how you find it. And I loved it. You know, I was never ever going to be a mainstream teacher. I loved SEND. I loved the creativity you could bring to the table. I loved the children. It was just so not like rigid. So I don't think I ever would have survived in mainstream anyway. So I did my NQT year there in a lot, you know, and again, like the behavior was like insane. So you can imagine it was a really steep learning curve. But I was there for about 3 years and I absolutely loved it. And then I stopped kind of growing. I kind of felt like the place was just, it wasn't as good as when I started. So I then applied for another job and I started up. And then I went into a PRU, basically. And that PRU I ended up staying in for 9 years. So quite a long time.
Wow. I mean, what do you think, if I asked you to just ponder on this, what do you think is the difference between mainstream and SEND and PRUs? Where would you place that?
God, it's a very hard question. What are the difference? So many differences. The one that really sticks out is you're not, and I've been thinking about this a lot more recently actually because of my son and how he's not really fitting into mainstream that well. But yeah, I guess the main difference is I feel like they're just freer, these kids. Like, it's so rigid mainstream. I feel like whenever I go in there, I just go, ugh, because it's like, I feel like sometimes we're creating like robots in a way as well. My son at the moment is not, he's doing amazing, but he's finding it boring, basically. And I just go in there sometimes and I think, oh my God, it's such a full on day. So yeah, that's the one thing. I don't know what the biggest difference is, but the thing that popped into my head was this idea of, just being able to be free and letting them be themselves a bit more.
And that's fair. So you're weaving your way through.
Yeah.
You are, if it doesn't feel as though you're growing, you feel the need to level up, you move.
Yeah.
So that's moving us through 11 years. So what year does it take us to that you start a brand new provision? You take a leap and you go to this completely brand new school.
Yeah. So weirdly enough, the brand new school lasted for 3 months. I lasted 3 months in this brand new provision. So what happened was I stayed in this PRU for 9 years, had a really good team behind me. But what changed was I had a child, basically. I got pregnant. And working in a SEND provision, being pregnant is quite scary. You know, there's a lot of you're dealing with a lot of volatile behavior. You don't really know what's going to happen day to day. And being pregnant in that situation, I did find that really, really hard. That's when my love of teaching and I suppose the provision sort of waned a bit, because I was like, I just didn't feel safe there anymore. That kind of really changed things. Like, kids would be, you know, like a lot of the time they were directing their behavior at each other. It wasn't even at you. It's more like, but you know, you kind of normally I'd sort of jump into situations and grab the chair that they're about to throw at some other like kid's head. But this time I was like, oh, I can't do that now. So I had to like take a step back, and it was really odd. And I think that got me thinking. So I left teaching. I went on maternity leave and obviously had my first son. And then when I returned, I was like, it just wasn't the same. I don't think we were talking about this, Sharon, early on in the week. When you have a child, it's like you've been in a car crash. Like everything changes, and you go back like a completely different person.
Absolutely. And this is a theme that's coming up more and more and more. And we discussed it this week, actually, with another guest in an episode that we are about to release. Not only do you change, but perceptions of you change from your colleagues who you worked with. Sarah, you know it yourself. What are your thoughts on the mums? Sarah Dunwood, what are your thoughts on this conversation piece? Because it is something that's coming up more and more.
It is, and it aligns with, to be fair, it aligns with research that the unions have done, and some of the research that we've done to do with the misuse of support plans, in terms of very generally the profession is not set up to support women who are having children and then need, for a variety of reasons, flexibility coming back, safety, a whole variety of reasons. But I do think more than that, it's not just the education system. I do think the weight of other people's perceptions, particularly people around you who make decisions about your working day and what you should be doing and what the expectations are. I think, I don't know, I feel like I'm about to slip back into the 1970s when I say this, but I do feel like people think that you become less when you come back to work after a child.
You are different when you come back after a child.
Yeah, I didn't say different. I said less.
Okay. I think using the word less and thinking about conversations within the past, we give less. When you come back after teaching, if you think about what was being said, before you have a child, the chances are you are over-delivering. You're over-delivering because that's the nature of who we are. The longer hours, you're involved in more activities within the school. You are doing more. And when you have a child, you start to do less.
Yeah, and I think this is where I'm the wrong person to even be able to relate to that.
You didn't?
Because I didn't. I went back after 11 weeks of maternity leave and I went straight back into full whack 70-hour weeks. For me now, looking back, it's not amazing. It was completely the wrong thing to do. But there were a variety of factors that sat around it. But I can't understand. I understand what you are saying in terms of there is a natural thing, but because it's not my personal experience. And that's something that I feel a lot of guilt for, because that's why I said it's not amazing. I should have been much more present with my child, but I wasn't, because the dynamics of the school that I was in. And interestingly, there was a snapping point with me for the school that I was in, because my son he was quite poorly a couple of times that required him going into hospital and us being overnight and him not being able to keep medication down and things like that. And I remember a conversation, I wasn't senior leadership at the time, with an assistant head who, after I'd come back after 3 days off after him being poorly, said to me, we need to have a conversation about the amount of time off you're having to look after your own child. Can your husband do it? And we'd been taking it in turns. And then she said, well, if you're both struggling in terms of time off, why don't you get a nanny?
You never told me this.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it was the trigger point for me looking for a different job, because we'd had a new head at that school. That was now becoming the culture. And that was, I couldn't believe it. So I left.
To me, Sarah, there's three things that I think we're not moving with the times with. And I'm going to throw these in.
Mm-hmm.
One, I don't think we move with the times with exactly this conversation. when we come back from maternity leave.
Yeah.
I don't think we've moved with the times when it is coming to adults discovering neurodivergent traits within themselves.
Yeah.
And the third one is, I don't think we're moving with the times with women of a certain age who are going through the menopause.
Yeah. That is another big one as well. And I think something that really stuck out when, Sarah, you were just talking then, was this guilt factor. And that is so, I mean, mums more than anyone really feel that guilt factor, because once, and that's a massive thing, when you return from maternity, like you said as well, Sharon, the workload's still there, everything's still there, and yet you have not got that same time and that brain, you know, that bandwidth to then manage both of these things at the same time in the same way. And that's when the guilt lays on, because you feel like a rubbish mum. Because like I felt rubbish so many times. I remember sitting on the sofa in the morning. It was like, I remember it was 5:30. My son had been coughing all night and I was sitting there working out, where is my child going to go this morning? Because I have to go in. I cannot let my team down. There is no way I can stay at home on my own. And I need to offload him. And actually it's really sad, because I knew he should be at home. He should be resting. Again, it's that guilt. You feel like a rubbish mum. And then you take the day off. Say I did take the day off. I'm sure I did on a number of occasions. And then you feel guilt for that. And that is really strong. And I think that's a massive thing. It's that guilt element. It's so hard as a mum.
With that in mind, and three of us who've been through the same but different things where this is concerned.
Yeah.
What are some quick wins that schools could be doing, both culturally and practically? What could they have done or do?
It's a really good question. I mean, to be fair, the place I was at was actually relatively supportive. I think a lot of the pressure we actually give is on ourselves as well. I think a lot of it comes from ourselves rather than from anyone else. But you're right. Schools should be doing a lot more. I think again, I think it has to be time. You know, like Sarah said, you know, they were like itching for you to come back. Like they weren't giving you that time when actually, you know, your young person has like, you know, a serious kind of illness that you need to be there for. So definitely they need to allow more time. They need to be more, like, the whole feeling around it is like you're letting the school down by being a parent, basically. I don't know. It's really hard.
I think it's really hard in the school system because, and there was a little bit of a row about this last night online, because in teaching, you work in a profession where you do not have flexibility about where you can take your annual leave. And there is, in most teachers' contracts, there's very little capacity for any sort of personal, compassionate leave. I mean, for goodness sake, you only get a day for a funeral if it's a direct member of family in most instances, which is offensive. So I think there is an inherent inflexibility because there are 190 days a year where we need to be in school because it's student facing. And we can't just pivot and say, I'm taking one of my days off to look after my child. And that to me is almost an insurmountable problem, because in a different sector, if I was in the job that I'm in now and I had a young child and the child wasn't well, that would be a conversation I would have with Sharon, and I would just go, I'm taking a day's leave because I need to look after James. And there would be no question about it. So I don't know how you get round that in a school system without it then being inequitable comparably to other professions, which then puts teaching into yet another spiral of, well, you get all of these holidays and you get all of this and you get all of that. I don't know how, because how do you make the teaching day and the teaching week flexible? And I do think it's a question that can't be answered with a sensible solution.
I think there's a mid-ground, and just bear with me. You're right. We can't move the children. Okay, it's like being a prison officer and saying, well, you've got a shift on the wing. You're going to have to go to where you are delivering front-facing. But let's look, particularly in primary schools, how it's structured. It is one teacher delivering to one year group the whole thing. Well, automatically there, you've painted a lot of boxes. You've put a lot of sides around that particular person for inflexibility. If you had 6 year groups, but one person was not in charge of that 1 year group, they were mixing and matching and moving across year groups. So you were the teacher in charge of literacy for the whole of the school, or you were delivering the literacy, or you delivered in 3 or 4 different classrooms. And I had somebody who needed to not work in an afternoon or needed to take 3 days. I could move staff around that building creatively as the head teacher. I could I'd have more flex. One of the things that I will not have at Connexus is any one member of the team being the only member of the team who can do a certain thing. Because if we've got a wonderful woman, Elise, and she does a lot of our finances. But we could all, if anything happened, Elise needed time off, step in with different skill set. I think as a starting point, we've painted ourselves into corners by saying that's the year 6 teacher.
I think it's broader than that as well. I think actually the daytime stuff with teaching should be a straightforward fix. And I would distill it down to the simplest possible thing, which is going to cause massive offence, I have no doubt. Mm-hmm. But it is easy enough, it might cost, but it is easy enough to put a supply teacher in a classroom. The classroom is not the issue when people have time off. It's all of the thoughts about what's mounting up as a result of you being off. So as a different example, Sharon knows I just flounced off over to Alaska for 16 days, and it was glorious. I didn't think about work once, and I didn't think about what was waiting for me when I got back. When you're off, whether it's personal, whether it's, you've had a surgery or you've had a baby or there's whatever, in the back of your mind, you're waiting for all of that paperwork you've got to do, the marking that's mounting up, the ridiculous deadline that has still got to be met because something is needed by somebody else. I think it's that sits around it that's actually the biggest issue, and it's that weighs on people's minds. I trusted whenever I was off in school, I trusted that what was happening during the day was fine. I'd left planning, there was resources, there was a head of department. I wasn't not bothered about the kids, but I was not bothered. That was not my thinking. It was all the other stuff. Yeah, it was all the other stuff. And I that's where I think the problem is. You can't legislate. How do you legislate for flexibility in that? Because there isn't the staffing capacity to have multiple people who might be able to step in and do X for you, or for me, do the school improvement plan.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. And you're right. And you keep mentioning this word flexibility, and that is exactly what parents need, what mums need when they get back. They have to have some sort of flexibility. And like you said, Sarah, you have to do like the forward facing, you have to be in that classroom to teach. But like you said, do we need to, offload all these other sort of tasks on mums when they've just come back? I don't know. It's very difficult. It's a very difficult.
I think there's a question before that. Do they even need to be doing these tasks?
Oh, we don't need code on that.
And that's the starting point.
That's
what are I doing this for? And taking it back, you say, the only way I can describe it is our team. We will walk in and we will say, where are you up to? What's your capacity? What's your workflow?
Yep.
Constant discussion is taking place within a team of people who feel confident enough to communicate and say, I'm struggling.
Yeah.
And we've created a culture where a head will pop up above some screens and say, what can you give me? And particularly if that person's role has been structured good enough to be able to say, well, because we've got a shared skill set, can you do this for me? Can you phone all these parents? Yeah, I can do that. Right, this is the list. We can do that. It is about asking, where are you up to with capacity? If you listen to one of the best episodes I've ever recorded with Amy Mead, who talks about the civil service, she talks about how it is set up to succeed and get the very, very best from it. Was it civil service or was it training and development?
It was learning and development. It was a private sector company, and they were extraordinarily flexible, even to the point where actually what they've ended up doing. I mean, she's moved on now. She's somewhere very different, very swanky. I'm not saying the name, but there's lots of little toys around with pointy ears. But they empowered her to ask for what she was entitled to and more. And
that's not what I have teaching.
No.
Nowhere.
They even start you off with, I think it was either Amy or it might have been head of education for the prison services who had a child with needs. So she had a carer's package in place. What are you going to need at any point to care for your child? You've disclosed at interview that your child has got additional needs. What do you need to have in place? Wow. Next, have you got enough time? The other thing that's come to my attention, and it would work for people returning from maternity leave, is a proper phased return.
Yes, I agree. Definitely.
Really well structured.
Yeah.
Sarah's coming back from maternity leave. So in the first instance, she's coming back 2 days a week and she is simply teaching in the classroom. Don't email, don't stop her in the corridor. You don't ask for anything because she's on a phased return. And these kind of wonderful, miraculous solutions are what is going on in other sectors where there are still high demands. It's not just because there are 30 children sat in a room waiting for you. You're absolutely right, Sarah. We can be doing it better. And it comes from that leadership. We have had circumstances in our team and we are breakneck speed at Connexus. Sarah, what is it like? It is, sorry, Mike Roberts, he's batshit most of the time. Please don't think we're just walking around limb dam feeding the ducks all day.
No. You come across as being very direct and supportive as well. And again, that's not. And actually, now you say it, I actually really like that idea of a phased return. I really do. And that idea of, okay, yeah, there's your class, do the lessons. We all know that the admin stuff is probably the worst part of the job, isn't it? Everyone loves the actual teaching part, And this is another thing that we see with mums as well, is we tend to go back part-time. So we tend to go back on doing 3 days out of 5, thinking, okay, is this a nice balance, And then what happens is you're working on your days off. Because you cannot, you're working a full-time job in 3 days, basically. And that's what always ends up happening with mums. It didn't so much happen with me because I wasn't in mainstream. So I didn't have that level of admin that mainstream teachers have. But still, you're taking a lot home with you. And that's what happens with mums as well. They're working Monday to Friday. You're then thinking, oh, I should be doing this. You're getting emailed on your days off as well. Like, can you do this? There's a really grey area with that as well. I don't know if you've spoken to many people about that, but that's really frustrating. You've got your days off and you're being contacted to do all these things, and then your brain's kicking in, and then the guilt kicks in, and you're like, oh, I'm really rubbish, and I should be doing this. And
then you have a conversation with somebody and we say, by 2021 you're out. Let me tell you how I see things as somebody at the helm of my business.
Yeah.
So almost like a head teacher. The reason I accommodate and I flex, the reason it's what do you need? What can I do? It's not because I'm Lady Bountiful. It's not because I am altruistic and all that. I have invested time, training, and I mean really great training with the team that I have around me. They are bloody good at what they do, and I want to retain them. I don't want the pain point of having to start from scratch when I already have somebody in situ who, because of the skills that they bring, because of the commitment, but because of the training and the development that they've had in our team, I don't want them to go. And that's the bit I don't understand with leadership teams or governors or multi-academy trusts. Even the sake of putting a job advert out there takes time and money and finding the right person, what bit of an induction program they have. Surely to goodness, you would move heaven and earth to keep the likes of you, Sarah, in your team, because you know it inside and out. You're a safe pair of hands. I know you at your best. So it's up to me as a leader to keep you at your best, because at your best, you're brilliant.
Yeah.
And when I think about who we've got in our team, they're all ex-teachers, apart from Sarah's son, who by default, he knows the drill. You know, he's in a relationship with a teacher. His mother's a teacher. He's been brainwashed for years. But I don't want them going anywhere. And here's the interesting thing. And if they are struggling because their dad's poorly, unexpectedly, or they've had some family issues, or their dog needs great rest, guess what word I'm going to use? They get support. There you go, controversially. How can I support you? And it was a long time, wasn't it, Sarah, that we could use the word support within our team, and particularly with our franchisees. When we say, how can I support you? But they get genuine. I'm right, aren't I, Sarah Dunwood? We know how to support our gang.
Yeah. And it's fundamentally, my perception is this: it's not difficult. You just have to be creative, and you just have to listen to what that person needs. But I think where I would go to is that in a larger organization, such as a school, even a small school, I think leaders then start to worry that if they do something for one, they're going to automatically have to do it for other people, even if other people don't need it. And they escalate it in their own heads into, this is going to be a drama. I'm going to have loads of people taking time off to do X, Y, and Z. But I also think, weirdly, that they worry that they're doing something wrong in terms of the law, but at the same time, Schrodinger's leaders also completely doing things wrong in terms of employment legislation. It's like they worry they are doing it wrong, but they're doing something wrong with something else in the law. I think I said this a couple of weeks ago. There is not the training to do with managing and leading people, because managing is different than leading. And what we're talking about when people aren't being supported with flexibility or sensible adjustments to help them to ease back in after a maternity leave or whatever, that's management. And there is so much talk about leadership now. And I think that's at the expense of management. When I did my training as a middle manager, because that's what I was a middle manager. We were not middle leaders when you and I were at that level. There was very much a focus on what are your management elements? What are your leadership elements? And I do think that's partly at the heart of it. People don't know how to manage as well as lead people.
And you know what? With that in mind, I'm going to set myself a challenge. I want people to contact me who maybe from our group who are still in teaching. Probably wouldn't be in our group if that was. I want somebody to talk to me where that is happening. I am in a great school. This is what my head does. This is what my deputy. The boundaries with us are so strict for us. We are empowered. Come and find me. Have a talk to me, because I would love to hold some space in a podcast with somebody who's getting it right, just to equal up what we talk about all the time. There's got to be. I do talk to teachers. Who work in what they consider to be good and supportive schools. So there you go. Shout out. Let's find them. Anyway, we're rambling. So you get to 2021. How do you exit, Sarah? How do you leave this profession?
Yeah. So by then I had another child, actually, my daughter. So she was born September 2020. So I'd obviously COVID, typical COVID sort of baby. So, you did the whole teaching online thing. But yeah, that was interesting. And got back. My daughter was born in September 2020. And then I went straight back into teaching in January, like quite quickly, because, just for financial reasons and all sorts of reasons. And then I decided that I wasn't growing anymore. The team had changed. I was like, it's time for me to move on. So I started looking for jobs, and I found this incredible job locally. And I don't want to give away like too much, but anyway, and it was amazing. I started chatting to the head. So she already had a school. She already had an SEN school, specialist school set up. It was amazing, in a really nice rural setting. And she was now building this like sister school, SEN school in more of like the city type location. And she said, "This is a perfect time. You've contacted me, like come and look around." And yeah. And then, so that was March 2021. I started talking to her. And then within like a month, like she'd offered me a position. I didn't even interview. It was like, obviously I had a lot of reputation and a lot of good references from being at this Peru for 9 years. And so I just thought, I felt like this was amazing. Like I also negotiated afternoons off, Friday afternoons off, so I could pick up my son from school. And I'd also negotiated, the right salary, but also with Senko. So I would start the kind of Senko process, because in my head I thought this is what I wanted, and this is like the next kind of step. And so that was all kind of, I think I signed the contracts in April 2021, and then I left my Peru July 2021, and then I started in September. And wow, it was interesting. It was obviously a brand new send provision. So brand new kids, brand new staff. Like it was absolutely mental. They're obviously trying to find their feet. We're trying to, and it was good. We were all kind of just, it was hard work, but I expected it to be hard work. Like I've taught these kind of kids before. I knew it was going to be difficult. But yeah, it was hard, but really, really difficult. So those Friday afternoons, there's no way I was getting to pick my son up. That was then taken up with planning time, with, I couldn't just leave. There was too much stuff to do. I could never just go, "Oh yeah, see you later, guys. I'm just going to pick up." Like there was just too much to do. And again, I was working ridiculous hours. I was getting in at like 7:30, 7:30. And yeah, I just wasn't leaving. I wasn't seeing, this was just in 3 months. Like I just literally wasn't seeing my family at all. It was insane. And my kids were only like 3 and 1 at the time. So,
wow.
But I was in this moment. I thought, this is going to get better. I just need to like focus and dial in, and this will improve, and everything will be okay. It'll be fine. And the behavior was on another level, like because of the fact that
you see, I've never done a Pro. I don't understand. So if you're saying another level, what does another level look like?
Another level looks like a lot of dysregulation. So when you've got an established, decent specialist Pro or school, you get dysregulation, but people jump in and they manage it really well. That dysregulation obviously can look like all sorts, like throwing chairs, or, it starts off obviously low level, doesn't it? And then increases. So yeah, but this was on another level because we weren't a well-versed group together yet. We weren't working as we should be yet. That everything wasn't in place yet. So, which is to be expected. So I think this behavior escalated quicker than it would normally. So I'm just trying to think. I blocked out so many things. There's so many. What can I say that happened there? I mean, I used to come over a lot of bruises in that job. Let's just say that. And I remember going to a yoga class, like during that 3 months, and that was the one time I could even like escape for one evening to get to a class, because other than that, I was just constantly working. And she just looked at my arms and was like, oh my gosh, like it was awful. But yeah, it was a lot. You're having to get involved. There's things being thrown everywhere. It's very exhausting, very exhausting. But yeah, so that was tough.
So you did 12 weeks, and at what point are you going?
So what happened? So there was a particular young pupil. Now, he was a really complex person. He was a lovely, lovely little boy, but he had a very complex background mixed in with ASD and all sorts of things. Probably one of the most complex pupils or young people I've ever worked with and met. Because again, naturally, you work with these kind of students, you can compare and contrast, right? And he wasn't managing within the classroom, and obviously bearing in mind the classroom was smaller settings, so you only got like 5 or 6 kids in there. So he actually went and he had his own room in the end within this provision. So you can imagine how high need he was. Now, I was tasked with working with him quite a lot because he was like once in my class. So it was kind of like, it was like an offset from there. So I had to kind of work with him quite a bit. And for whatever reason, I didn't feel comfortable about it. There's something that just wasn't gelling for me. I don't know. And I didn't feel that safe working with him. And that says something, because I worked with like loads of different pupils. I'm not saying I'm like a massive expert, but you just get to have that instinct, that feeling. And I remember approaching the head, and he'd shown he threatened a lot and said, I'm going to do this to you. And he'd do it for like a reaction, like I'm going to, like I'm going to hurt you. And he'd do it to sort of test. And I didn't feel like over a period of time, this relationship was really getting any better. So I approached the head and I said, I'm just not comfortable doing this anymore. Something's not working. And she said, well, that's your job. That's part of your role, is to work with this person. And she almost kind of shamed me as if I was doing something wrong. Like, okay, there's obviously you've got to do it. And I was like, but that's not how we have to be flexible and send, like, something isn't working, And at that point, I was really, really drained. And by the whole situation, something wasn't working. And I remember getting home, and then my other half said, look, you can leave, And I was like, no, I can't. Like, I didn't ever think about leaving. Like, no one goes into teaching and goes, oh, I'm going to leave. Do they? Like,
not when you start with, it is my life, it is my identity. It's not a job.
Exactly. It became exactly that. So when he said that, I was like, hey, yeah, okay. Like, I was like laughing manically. Like, that's ridiculous. And I can't just leave. Like, and he was like, just like, at this point, I genuinely thought this young person I was actually going to get quite hurt. And when you become a parent, like years and years ago, I wouldn't have cared. Like, I'd just, yeah, it's fine, it's crack on. But when you're a mum, you're like, well, I actually don't want to be hurt because I've got 2 little ones that need me. And yeah, so I just, something sort of connected. And this was in November 2021. I looked at my contract, because it was a really new contract. And it said that essentially you only have to give a week's notice, because it was a brand new provision. And I was like, okay. And I gave that notice in, and I was like, wow, this is it.
Did they fight to keep you?
Not really.
And you see,
she said, I understand your decision. To be fair, I think she was almost winging it herself because the whole place was in, I think, disarray. So I don't know, but I was grateful she didn't, to be honest. So I worked that week, and that was bizarre because obviously normally there's a much longer sort of period, isn't there, that you sort of work your notice, and that gives you some time to kind of like exit in your head. But within a week, I was left, and my whole teaching career was done, over.
Wow.
Which is mental in my head.
Do you know what was fascinating when you were having that conversation with your husband, your partner? It reminded me of when women are in really unsafe relationships. Why don't you just leave? I can't just leave. Because it is trauma bonded to your identity, who you are. Just walk away. You don't have to stay. But who am I if I'm not that? And then what changed? I became a mum. I couldn't leave for me, but when I thought about how it might impact my children, that was the game changer. And what I always would love to see shift with teachers, men and women, is when they find the self-worth within themselves to leave for themselves. Not because they've had kids, not because they need to be there for elderly parents who've become poorly. But I love speaking to a teacher who goes, and one day I got up and I went, nah, enough. I am not putting myself through this anymore. And when you actually work it out, we did a podcast recording the other night. The woman in front of us was becoming more, it's Lisa Mead, wasn't it? Sarah Dunwood. And she was becoming more and more broken. She was in a mess. She was crying in the head teacher's office. And we worked out that I think she was doing it for £350 a week. She was on 3 days a week as a primary teacher, and it was coming in at about £350 a week. And we forget how poorly paid the hours that you work in. If you actually work out your hourly rate, I'll guarantee you it was less than minimum wage.
Yeah.
And we lose sight of this. And with all of your years of experience, with everything you brought to the job, remember you weren't interviewed. Why weren't you interviewed? Because you were good enough by reputation. You'd got proof in experience. 12 weeks. And here's the difference. I can only surmise. Your head teacher will have gone home and said, I'm taking on a cracker. I found a brilliant woman. Sarah Grocutt. Oh my God, she's worked here, she's worked there. I've asked her round about her. She is amazing. I need to go after 12 weeks. All right, see you. It beggars belief. You fight to retain the caliber of who you bring through the door. And if they are not the same caliber after 12 weeks, it is because you've created an environment for them where they simply cannot thrive. It's crazy.
It is crazy. It is crazy. And it's really weird to think about now because this is nearly 4 years ago. And I've never really, this is the first time I've really gone into depth, not really that much depth, but more depth than I have done to talk about it because I just haven't wanted to, I don't know, it's just hard to talk about, isn't it? Because again, it's that feeling of failure. And a lot of teachers would have said this as well. Like when they leave, you have this massive sense of failure. Like, it's like, oh, like, yeah, it just ended. And I was almost ashamed and just didn't want to talk about it anymore. You know, and again, you know, it's such a typical thing to feel, but yeah. So it was the right decision, and I'm so glad it happened. I really am glad it happened. I did have a brief thought where I was like, I should have stayed at the previous place I was in, but again, I'm so grateful I did move because I would have just sat in that position in that Peru, and I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to be that teacher that was sitting in a role and had lost their kind of love for it and was just, you know, I'm going through the motions. I'm not that teacher. I wanted to be, you know, I wanted to be creative. I wanted to be motivated and inspire an inspirational, teacher to them. I didn't want to just be that person because we know lots of teachers like that just sitting in that role, right?
100%. 100%.
Yeah.
Would have been me. So you're out now.
I'm out. So yeah, it was really bizarre. This is a bizarre process. So yeah, went out in November. I took the month off. So I took the whole of like Christmas off just to kind of recalibrate and just sort my life out. And just like, I was so burnt out, like mentally, I just needed to just not do anything for that month. Obviously just saw my kids and stuff like that. And then January hit 2022 and I was like, right, what the hell am I going to do with my life? Like, I'm clearly not going to go back into school. I reached to that point, like, I just couldn't imagine another role that's going to do it for me. And I was like, I just don't think I'm going to go back into teaching. Tom was like, just my other half, he's like, well, just don't go back. And I'm like, well, I don't know what to do with myself. So anyway, cut a long process short, I remember getting a sponsored ad on Facebook and it was about copywriting and they geared up this advert, obviously for teachers. And they said, oh yeah, you've made great copywriters, all that kind of spill. And that kind of stuck in my head. And I was like, okay, let's look into this a bit more. So I started to read a bit more into it. I did a few sort of trainings and stuff as well. And then I jumped onto this freelance platform. I don't know if you guys have heard of it, called Upwork. So basically it's a freelance platform. You go on, businesses go on and they're looking for like social media managers or content writers or anything like that. And they put sort of like a post on there and then you can apply to kind of do it. And it's a good place. There's a lot of kind of rubbish on there, but it was good. So I went on there and that's how I built a client base. I went on there. I started talking to different businesses. It was really weird because I had to negotiate rates. I had to go on to Zoom calls and pretend I was an expert. And that was really uncomfortable, like really uncomfortable. But yeah, you kind of, as you guys have done, you kind of just push past that and you just keep going. And after a while, obviously I got more experience and, I charged more and yeah, and that's essentially it. It sounds really simple, but yeah, it was a good website.
It doesn't sound. We can always make things sound simple when we look back in hindsight. But Sarah Dunwood, I remember. Obviously, I'm with you during this period. But I remember, and you talk about it, and it always serves as great advice about how to audit your skills when you find yourself in Sarah Grocutt's position where I'm out and what do I do now? And it was your brother, wasn't it? Your brother pinned you down, even though he's your younger brother. He older brothered you. And what did you and your brother, what did you and Chris do at that point?
So fundamentally, there is a little bit extra to that it works really well if you've both got a glass of whiskey in your hand.
Nice.
So that would be my first piece of advice, is pour yourself a whiskey. Again, probably a privileged position because my brother was in the private sector, had been all of his adult life and had actually gone self-employed kind of 3 years ago. And he said to me, he was great. You tell me what you do in teacher speak. I will translate that for you into what that looks like as a skill or something within the private sector. And he'd been in a number of different kind of areas. So he had a huge amount of experience to be able to do that. And he was a business analyst as well. So we did sit down over whiskey and I would say to him, well, I have to do this. And he'd ask me a pile of questions. What does that involve? I have to do a school improvement plan. What does that involve? What does it look like? What does it include? What's this? Oh, in this, that in the business world is this. That's how you translate it across. And I think having done that with him, I would have been in a position to start applying for jobs. But then he sowed another seed and he was like, but you're a really good photographer and you've been doing that for ages. Why don't you just set up a business? And I went, oh yeah, that sounds easier. More fool me. Just before COVID when they locked the whole world down. So, but I think that idea of looking at, we bandy the term transferable skills around a lot. it's not actually that easy to see how they are transferable or what they translate to, because I think it's rather than transferable, it's translatable.
Nice.
And how they translate to different job roles. And for a lot of teachers who've been in teaching for a very long time, you've either done a number of job applications, but you know the drill. It follows a format. You know what you're expected to do. The whole interview process is pretty much the same. It's not changed very much at all over 25 years in reality. But if you're applying for jobs in the private sector, everyone is different. And the terminology that's being used is unfamiliar. And I was lucky. I had somebody who could translate that for me. Please, Christopher, tell me what on earth. It was like playing bingo with corporate jargon. So I understand that people get really frustrated and actually then frightened and worried about how they make themselves look less teachery, more something. And I do think that's where some good careers advice or a good work coach or somebody in that field who has got great references and has got the expertise and can actually guide you with that is a great idea. I see a lot of people recommending ChatGPT, and I would say, yes, fine, but buyer beware, because it's so spottable. It's unbelievable. So spottable. But I think it's really good. ChatGPT or any of the other ones. It's just that I'm familiar with Chat. Where I would go with that is put it in, get it to generate you some ideas, then work from that outside of ChatGPT. You can find somebody you can sound off to and go, but I do this on a daily basis. I manage a classroom with 30 children with 30 different needs who've all got slightly something different that they need to do. And then I do another 30 and another 30. Well, that's working at pace.
I can stand up in the blink of an eye and speak in front of a room of 30 people. I can be a Zent, I can deliver, I can train, I can teach. And I think two things sit around that as well. It's doing the transferables, the translatable. I like translatable skills. Well done, Lady Dunwood. We're having that.
I'm not as daft as I look.
And then it was something that Sarah said. And then you just have to step in and blag it for a bit. You just have to step up and go, oh. And that's when we listen to pit ponies who do it. They suddenly go to a networking event feeling an imposter. They price themselves, they apply for something. You realise that you might have 100 job applications that you're literally on a spreadsheet tracking where you're up to. How long will I know before I'm successful or I'm being called to interview? It isn't teaching. There are now no rules.
Yeah.
One of the things that I find in the main, whether like yourself, they are freelance, or like our guests who've gone into corporate, there is a period afterwards where you are staggered. So it's not the healing about a loss of identity. It's not a healing about not working with children anymore. You are staggered with what you put up with. You go through a period after you've left and you go, and it's easy to self-recriminate and beat yourself up and go, how did I think so little of myself that I put up with that for so long?
Yeah.
Did you reflect like that, Sarah? Thinking, what was I thinking?
Yeah, in some ways, I was fortunate because I was only really in that position for 3 months. But I guess for me, it was more the burnout overall from the whole job. From doing SEN for like 12 years is a lot anyway. But yeah, I did reflect. But I'm very good at burying things as well. So I was like, well, I'm just going to get distracted in this like new job, which is not obviously that healthy either. But it's very easy to sort of do that as well. But you were talking about like moving on and stuff. This is where Upwork is great because you kind of go on there and you can call yourself, like I could call myself a social media manager, create a profile, and then I can apply for jobs on there that they're short-term jobs, you can't rely on it as a source of income as such straight away. But that was the good thing about Upwork, because you could go in and you could play that different role immediately. And that was great. It was really great for me because you could call yourself that. You're speaking to businesses. They're talking to you as if you are an expert, which is lovely as well. And you haven't got that long sort of period of time, like between, applying for jobs and stuff. Because I knew I didn't want to do that. I just couldn't do that. I wanted the flexibility. I was like, I'm just going to work for myself now. And yeah, it's a completely different mindset, as you know, working for yourself. I used to procrastinate quite a lot. And now I'm just like, I can't procrastinate. I've got to crack on. I've got to do this. And you just stop doing that. So, yeah, flexibility is what all mums want, right? Even above, you talk about obviously the baseline, the financial baseline that you need. Once you've got that, for me, mums only ever want flexibility.
Hello, loyal listeners. I'm going to go full on Charles Dickens in this buy us a coffee slot. And as Oliver Twist, we're going to ask for a little bit more. Any pennies you can donate to keep our podcast funded would be greatly appreciated. See the buy us a coffee link in the episode notes. Thank you.
Being able to be around for my kids was just, absolutely incredible. And
I think that segues us in nicely to me asking about, since leaving the classroom, what has been a lovely, lovely sliding doors moment that would not have happened had you not have stepped away from teaching?
So definitely my sliding doors moment, I think, because it was towards the end of November when I left, and I quit, and the next day I didn't have to get up for work, and the kids crawled in bed with me. We put on the Grinch, the animated version of the Grinch, and there's this right at the beginning. There's these stalks. I don't know if you remember it, and they're on these. I think they're on skis, and they're sliding down. They play the little Christmas music, and my kids were snuggled up to me, and I was like, "This is it. This is life." Yeah.
And we have those sliding doors moments all the time.
Yeah.
And Sarah and I just living that at the minute, aren't we, my friend? We just
ducks are my friends now.
Yeah, Sarah goes out feeding ducks, and where we are, Sarah Grocutt, at the moment, we're in a world of talent. We've relocated. We've now got
that's ducks. Sorry,
she's obsessed. She's even naming them. Let me tell you what's happening, right?
Right.
We've moved to. We've invested in a learning centre in the most beautiful village in Lim. It's gorgeous, and it's actually called Summit House because it's at the top of a brew, and anywhere you walk in our village, it's just. It's like walking in a chocolate box picture postcard. That's our world.
Oh,
and it's autumn, so it's amazing. But the
autumn is beautiful.
Oh,
anyway, it's gorgeous, isn't it?
So we walk down, right? You just walk down this hill, and there's like the silver coffee van. Most of them are served by our ex-kids from Connectors. They sell duck food, right? Okay, it's £1 a bag. You just walk down, and you've got this beautiful dam. And Sarah has now got to the point where she just has to stand, and I swear to God, they recognise you, don't they, Sarah?
That's so funny.
They start coming across, and then I'll be yapping away in the background about something, and I know she's utterly zoned out because she's not a friend of the seagull. She's not happy when the seagulls come over. She's like, you lot can get away. You're not having anything. Come on, little ducks. Don't let those seagulls get you. Here are my goslings. Oh, Sharon, look at them. I have to stand for about 20 minutes. Well, she is yapping on about bloody ducks and geese and swans. And they are the sliding doors moments of our lives.
That's so true. So true. They're always the small things, aren't they?
Oh,
And this is what I really want to get across to teacher mums as well, because I know we're going to like finish soon, is that so much of when I look back, honestly, I can't believe what I've done. Like, I never would have thought I would have been capable of this. And when I left, I genuinely I had the same conversation in my head. Like, I'm never going to do anything. Like, I don't even know what to do myself. I'm never going to be able to do this. And then I look back and I have, and it's so hard to get this across. But I just want, especially mums, to know that, you know, you don't have to limit you. So you really don't have to limit yourself. You know, you can try something different. It's all the stories in your head, and we love to tell ourselves stories. We're amazing storytellers, aren't we? And, you know, just don't tell those stories to yourself, and just give it a go.
we call them, Sarah, limiting self-beliefs.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I can use
Series of limiting self-beliefs that we now convince ourselves are true, and they tend to have generated from a long time before. So question, one of the things we ask ourselves a lot in our days, is that true?
Yeah.
And who would we be if it wasn't true? So bringing that glorious chit-chat to a close, I'm going to make an effort not to keep bringing up swans, right? Because I think this is going to become a theme if I'm not careful.
Well, we can interchange it with sausage rolls and our almost daily sightings of Ian Brown from Stone Roses, because that's never going to get old.
That's good.
But the problem is, when we walk into the village, there is this bakery, right? So there's two things that we love. There's the bakery, and then there's a gorgeous cafe called Zalo's, right? So yesterday morning, which was Friday, we've suddenly decided that come hell or high water, we're having jacket potato Friday. We're going to go for our jacket potato at Zalo's on a Friday. Well, we were both becoming quite anxious, weren't we, that on Friday morning.
You and I were on the phone, and I was like, you are coming in, aren't you?
You are coming in. I am coming in. I've finished my Zoom call. Why would I not be coming in? You know why I'm coming in. I know what I'm going to do. And then we just broke rank and went, we are going for jacket potatoes, aren't we?
I love it.
We do some work.
And the other thing that's happened, Sarah, is every man and his dog literally is calling into our office with dogs to say hello, because they've now worked. Honestly, it's become Cheshire Dogs Home.
Oh, really? I had Sarah, don't you?
Well, one of our franchisees wants to ring. They're coming up to visit us, and like, oh, well, if you're accepting pets, he's got rats. He wants to bring his bloody.
Apparently, they're really sociable, though, aren't they? Yeah, they get a really negative press, but yeah.
What with them being vermin? Right.
Well, I love horror trails.
Right. Well, to let you into an insight of what I'm doing now, it's 18th of October. It's coming up to Halloween, and Ellie's having a Halloween party tonight at our house with 30 youths. So it's, can we go to B&M Bargains and buy as many pumpkins as you can shake a stick at? So
Standard.
there you go.
I love a bit of B&M. Very dangerous.
It is. That's where I want my ashes scattered. B&M Bargains. Right, and on that note, gang, thank you for everything, and I will see you both really, really soon. Thanks, Sarah. Thanks.
Nice to meet you, Sarah.
And you.
Bye.
Thanks for staying with us during another great episode of the Pit Pony podcast. And on behalf of myself, Sarah Dunwood, Mike Roberts at Making Digital Real, we wish you all the very best, and we'll see you soon. If you wish to contact me directly for a support session or a clarity call for your next steps, please find my link in the comments below. See you soon.